So thank you all for joining us. And again, our FoRēL webinar number 3 is on the topic of female environmental stewards, from justice to action. And we're really excited to discuss this topic, especially in the light of the recent COP26, and also because, as I know, I was just very encouraged by the different breakout room discussions and very energized by what's happening. I think a lot of us also act from our faith traditions and how that kind of motivates us to move forward and really try to make a difference of where we are. So to begin, I want to start with a headline I saw on an email I received after COP26. And the headline was, "Hope is not a strategy for climate justice. Resistance is." I'm just going to let that sit there for a minute. And this made me really think, especially as I was reading through the Glasgow Climate Pact and thinking about what is the impact. This past year, we have seen so many natural disasters, from earthquakes to fires to floods to storms. The list goes on. I don't need to say it. You all know it. And people's lives are being changed. People are being moved. They're being displaced. They're losing their livelihoods. All these things that we see, that we experience, that we know. Again, the list goes on. There are so many things that easily make us lose hope and easily become disillusioned by what can we do. And especially when we see decisions from high-level lawmakers or world leaders that are not as strong as we might have expected or perhaps hoped for, especially me speaking as part of a younger generation. What does this look like in the future? And where are we going to go next? So with all these thoughts in mind, at the same time, this statement I started with, that hope is not a strategy, I get it. We need to resist. We need to take action. We need to go to the streets. We need to write letters to our lawmakers. We need to do all these things. But I also think hope is still really important. And I choose to hope. And I think that the women we have tonight on this panel also give me hope, because they're each doing something in their lives and in the lives of others and in their communities that is instilling hope in others and actually allowing for practical action and change to happen. So tonight, I'm really excited to introduce our panel who will be joining us tonight. And unfortunately, we had one more panelist, but she was not able to join us because she was not feeling very well today. So let me introduce who we have, and then we're going to start our conversation. So first, I want to introduce Hajjat Aqua, and she is an eminent woman of Uganda. From 2016 is known as Mama Green and is the initiator of Greening Fridays. So she works with the Uganda Muslim Supreme Council, and since 2010, she's an international climate champion with several green accolades to her name. She is also the director of Energizing Solutions, and she was the Africa Insurance Personality of the Year in 2019, a Goodwill Ambassador in 2020, and also works for Women in Insurance in Africa, the UK-based Chartered Insurance Institute, and is a founding member of the Uganda Faith Network and Environment Action. So we're really glad to have Hajjat with us. And obviously, as her bio says, there's a lot of things that she's going to share with us as well. So I want to introduce next Helle. Liht is a native Estonian, so we're neighbors, as I'm in Finland. She has studied theology in the Estonian Free Church Theological Seminary and International Baptist Theological Seminary in Prague, in the Czech Republic. And she graduated there with a master's of theology, focusing on eco-theology. Her working experience includes 11 years serving in the Estonian Baptist Union and 5 years working with nature conservation projects for the Ministry of the Environment in Estonia. And so currently, since 2006, Helle is working with the European Baptist Federation as the Assistant General Secretary and serves as the Baptist World Alliance Creation Care Commission and represents the EBF and European Christian Environmental Network. She's also an ordained deacon in her home church in Kohila, Estonia, and a lecturer in the Estonian Free Church Theological Seminary, and also a member of the Estonian Council of Churches, which works in promoting creation care. So again, a full bio of a lot of different things that are really important and that will enrich this conversation. Next, I want to introduce Francesca Duvall, who is the founder and owner of Alchemist Farm, a humane chicken hatchery in Northern California. And she believes that for every ecological and social problem we are presented with, there are joyful solutions if we only open our hearts and get creative. And she is a leader in the poultry industry, showing that chickens and all animals deserve better treatment and are powerful allies in the puzzle of regenerating our planet to make it flourish for future generations. So she invites all business owners in every industry to look at what they have done to contribute to the current ecological issues we face, And she knows that only when we identify with how much we have been part of the problem, that we can be part of the positive solutions we also need. And last but not least, and also one of my sisters on the FoRēL team, I'm happy to introduce Hajar Al-Kaddo, who conducted her PhD research on humanitarian clean energy policy in SDG 7 at UCD. In her voluntary roles, Hajar was formerly the head of the Green Up My Community campaign for the Forum of European Muslim Youth and Students Organizations. The campaign was dedicated to greening Muslim institutions and geared towards ethical thinking. Currently, Hajar is a board member of DCIF, which is the Dublin City Interfaith Forum, and works with interfaith communities and government bodies in Ireland. She's also a team member of the FoRēL network, which is aiming to develop, empower, and engage women leaders from all different faith communities. So with these very extensive bios, and obviously so much more could be said about our speakers, we're so glad to have each of you here tonight and everyone who's joining us as well. So to begin, I want to start the first question. Hajjat, if you can still hear us, I want to direct it to you, because I really want to take up this first piece about action. And I think it's really important to highlight what each of you have been doing in your communities and what you're doing. So Hajjat, the first question is to you. How can female leaders take the first step in environmental action? And can you tell us a little bit more about the work that you have done?
Okay, thank you so much for this question. It's a very, very good question to start with. First and foremost, women are 50% of the global population. And we cannot afford to leave them behind in this journey of protecting the environment. I would like to use myself as a living example because I'm already practicing. And what can we do to encourage women to be on this journey? As women, we need to be deliberate and intentional in the way we do our work. We need to plan. We need to be sure that this is the direction we want to take. And you know why it is so easy for us to do that? Because we do have the soft skills, and these soft skills enable us to work with almost everybody. We are the mothers. So whatever word we say, they should be able to take it, because then after we have been deliberate in protecting, say, the environment, planning, and taking the action that we take, we need to lead by example. We need to get involved. But as we lead by example, we need to have teams. And those teams, we mentor them, we take them along. So after we have the teams, we are leading these teams, and then we are able as women to influence the rest of the population in doing what we are exactly doing. So what I'm saying is that we must get involved as women in this journey, I call it the green journey. We must be involved, we must be deliberate, we must do our planning. For me, I have involved women at grassroots and even at higher levels. So at some point in time, I'll share with you some of the photographs of the work that we do. But right now, I should say that we should use the soft skills that we have as ladies. We should use the touch. We have a soft voice, but it is so loud. So they will be able to listen to us as we take along others. Basically, that's what I have to say for now. Thank you so much. I hand over to my colleagues.
Yeah, thank you, Hajjat.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I know, Helle, you wanted to say something as well, so I just want to invite you to jump right in.
Yes, I was just fascinated to hear about you, Hajjat, mentioning the soft skills of women. And it brought to my mind the family image, because many of you know Saint Francis, who is a Christian saint, very well known, who lived in 12th, 13th century, and he envisioned the whole universe as a family. He created this great poem or song about brother sun and sister moon and brother wind and sister water and all other members of this family who belong to God and are being sustained by God. And our current Pope Francis, who has taken his name also from Saint Francis, has actually made a very helpful connection between this old song and contemporary attitudes towards creation. He says that the way we view creation affects the way we behave towards it. Therefore, the image of family and soft skills, I think, is really helpful. It encourages attention and care and would help to avoid exploitation and misuse. So maybe this is something what women leaders can actually take up and bring further to our societies. So thank you very much, Hajjat, for bringing this up.
Yeah, I think that's a really incredible thing you're saying, and also the mindset perspective that you just brought up as well. The way that we think of the environment is how we behave towards it. And Francesca, if I can invite you to kind of speak to this. I think you offer kind of this example too, and what a lot of things that you think about, even in this kind of, again, this how do we take the first step? What does this look like in behaving differently?
Taking that first step is all about making sure that our hearts, for me, are not hardened. And when our hearts are open and we feel what's happening to the people on planet Earth and to the natural world, we know that it's our job to be caring for it, because this is such a gift that we've been given. I love the phrase soft skills. You know, some people feel, I've always felt oftentimes as a woman, like it wasn't my place to stand up and say something, or it wasn't my place to make some changes. But I am a mother now, I am a wife, I am a daughter, and there are men all around me. Even though this seems like a man's world, there is women connected to all of these men who can be speaking to them from a place of love, not of judgment, but to change minds, because I know that a lot of people want to make changes and don't necessarily know how to. For the leaders in our church, the Russian Orthodox Church, the highest of leaders are all saying we need to be caring for creation. They're saying it down to all these parishes all over planet Earth, and the parishes aren't all following suit, partially because they don't know how to. And it's the women in the parishes. In my parish in California, we made tons of changes. The generation above me made changes to completely change our waste, you know, the things that we do on a daily active Sunday activity. And that is just the day-to-day actions that women in the parish said, we need to change this. This is crazy. And so they did. They didn't wait for someone else. They didn't wait for permission. They just slid right in there and did it with love. And everyone said, this makes sense. Let's do this. So people above us can say whatever they want, but it's the day-to-day grassroots that actually make it happen. And as we make those small changes in our lives, like I'm here without an environmental justice degree, and I'm not out there on like the world stages talking. I'm just a person who's a farmer working with the land and my animals. And if I can be making positive changes, anyone can. So don't wait for enough education or enough experience. Just open your heart and pray and wait for those answers to come back as to the movements you need to make. Because when you open that conversation, it starts flowing, and it's a really incredible experience. It also energizes you, because this topic is broad and it's very easy to get burned out on it. But when you pray and you ask for strength and you ask for direction, then that extra energy comes, and it's not just you, it's the whole global community coming together for greater good, and you're going to last longer because we need you.
Yeah, thanks, Francesca. I think that's really important too, that also the spiritual support too, and also how this continues to help us to continue to do the work that is really important. Hajar, I want to invite you if you have any thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, I mean, so far some really, really kind of hard-hitting and interesting perspectives. And I think for me, it feels like a bit of a no-brainer. You know, when you think about female leaders, you think about responsible leadership, you think about how women foster increased human connections, for example, you know, by championing different values or bringing in diverse stakeholders in the decision-making. You know, we boost collective intelligence, for example, through, this kind of decision-making processes, but we also encourage accountability at all levels. And I think that is, for me, one of those three important points that, speak deeply about environmental action. These are female leadership qualities and the values that drive us, as Francesca and others have said. Those deep spiritual values that drive us are where the first step is going to happen, by using these different female leadership qualities. And I think that's, for me, some of the most important ways that we can get this these words into action and so on. But yeah, that's just my little very quick insight there.
Yeah, thanks, Hajar. It stuck with me also how, like, you summed up very beautifully that the talent and beautiful skills that we as women bring to the table also helps inspire action in some different ways, depending also on our context, right? And how we feel called to share these talents that we have to make this happen. I'm wondering, Helle, if you could share from your experience, like how you've seen this kind of first step take place, or like if you have tips of how that's happened, just in your kind of background and in the work that you've done. Where do you see people kind of taking the first step, or something that you have done that you really then saw that really inspired others to also continue to do this work?
Well, I think I first have to say that my tradition has not been too eager to take up the creation care issues at all. Partly because I think the way we have read our scriptures and understood them, so it has taken some courage for me actually to talk about those things, to teach in the seminary and in the churches that it is important. It is important because this is really the area what connects us all as people and creation. We are all bound together, and the way we treat our ecosystem is the way we treat each other, because we are bound together and we do live together. We depend on each other. I think I have also tried to motivate our people in terms of their faith, to show them that their faith and creation care belongs together. I just have a friend in Norway who did a research among younger generation in churches, just to ask how they connect their everyday life. They care for environment. They are deeply concerned, and they faith, and there is no connection for these young people to bring their faith and they care for environment together. The connection is missing. So I'm still working on making this connection for our people visible, tangible, understood, so that they would take the steps. But of course, we do have some good examples as well. And I think on European level, the European Christian Environmental Network is really making good effort and bringing a good change for different Christian traditions in Europe. One of the helpful things what they have started is to introduce creation time, which is really again to introduce to the churches the ways how to bring the faith and care for creation together, and to show that they connect, and we are responsible, and we need to take action. So ECEN, we call it, European Christian Environmental Network. There are women working there as well, mainly in educational areas as well, eco-education. So these are some of the things. In Estonia, we have something what we have started is let's do it, which means that let's clean our country. It has become a worldwide initiative now. Let's do it world. And I'm very glad that our Council of Churches has actually taken it up. And now we promote also our churches to participate in this bigger initiative, clean up our country and then clean up all the world. So if you Google and find Let's Do It World, then you can also sign up there and bring your churches or your faith communities or other organizations to be part of this global movement and do something practical in that way. So that's probably one of the examples I would mention here.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think both the community aspect of we can't do this alone. I think that was either said in one of the breakout rooms or maybe on the panel that we really need to support one another. And I really love this approach of let's do it together. And also your comment about connection between kind of the faith and then also whatever faith tradition that may be, and also this action environmental crisis. What do we do? I think is so crucial because that's something that I know I personally also struggled with too, and we really tried in our communities to do that. So I want, Francesca, if you can kind of speak to that a little, because I know in your community, you also struggled with this disconnection, and really the struggle was kind of bringing this connection of how does our faith also work in our daily lives with the practical actions we do. So if you could briefly comment on that. And then Hajjat, I'm going to ask you to also share right after Francesca and kind of show us a little bit of your work as well.
In my faith tradition of being Russian Orthodox, it's written everywhere in the scripture that caring for God's creation is something that we should be doing. But for whatever reason, there was a disconnect between what was offered in Sunday services and speaking about that, and in the culture of the church. It almost was something that was like pagan if you were taking care of the natural world, like you were worshiping it. But that's so far away from what reality is. And it's almost a, what's the word? If someone is like hypnotized, it's hypnotized away from the truth of being one with the connection of nature. Because if we open our hearts and feel and see what's happening out in the world, you can feel like, oh, like this isn't right. And then we can enter into caring for it. So for us, practically, it was just doing a step-by-step guide of coming together of what we knew that we could do. We could see that was not working for us as a parish, how much trash we were creating, minimizing things like that. Where were our energy sources? Okay, we don't want to be supporting coal. Let's go for solar panels, just making all of these different changes as a parish. And the culture, even though for some people it could be politically polarizing, we just didn't make it a political thing. It doesn't matter who you're voting for. If you are for God's creation, then you're just going to care for it. Anybody who is really in their heart can't say with a good conscience, I don't want to care for what God's given me, because then they're totally disconnected from what the reality of their faith is.
Yeah, thank you. And I think this like connection piece, Hajjat, I want to invite you to speak to this next. I think also the ways that you have brought this faith into action piece is really important. So I think this might be also a good time to show us some of those, briefly show us some of your photos, but really if you could tell us the work that you do, especially in your Greeting Fridays, I think would be really incredible.
Okay. Greeting Friday is the day that we initiated, and it's a very big day. It's gazetted by the Uganda Muslim Supreme Council. You see in the virtual background, that is the National Mosque. It's a very big mosque. I think it's about mosque number 2 or 3 in Africa in size. But it's always full during the Fridays, during the Ramadan. So this Greeting Friday is held every second Friday of the holy month of Ramadan. And we have preaching in a mosque where the Imam talks to us, to everybody, about the scripts. What does it say about protecting the environment? After which we do the practical giving out of the trees. And then we plant trees with the big people. And we give trees to, whoever comes for prayer. Okay, this year was the 12th Greeting Friday. And this is a national paper. We have good coverage. You can see trees there are given out from a truck to whoever comes for prayer. They come, they take trees, they go and plant after they've been sensitized about the environment. You can see us giving out. You see me there in black and gray, giving out trees to the ladies and the gentlemen and to everybody. And the tree that you see there, we planted it with His Excellency the President, and it has grown now into a big tree. And you can see we planted a tree with those shapes and then giving out. So it is like a practical round there. You go, you do the preaching, you listen to the preaching, after which you practice, which is, I really like to call upon everybody on this call to at least have a day, irrespective of your religion. And that day is the day that you'll be protecting the environment. And that's the, like, whatever activities you have done throughout the year, you report, and then you are able to reflect and then move forward. We have planned to plant 1 million trees. I have so far covered about half of that, and we are still continuing. Okay, so that's what I wanted to share with the members of this call, that it is really possible for us as the ladies, we can, as women, given our soft skills, given our values, we can bring people together. We can have these big things that we can do to influence community and be able to protect the environment by involving everybody. I thank you so much, and we shall continue with this discussion, members.
Yeah, thank you, Hajjat.
so much.
Thank you so much. I really, I mean, I've heard you speak a couple of times now, but I'm always so impressed because, as you said, it's starting with the small actions, right? I think at times we're very lost for what we can do because this problem is so overwhelming. And the fact that you were just like, let's plant trees. And it's something that we say sometimes, at least I know it's been said in places where I've been, but actually doing it takes a little bit of work, but it's amazing you've been able to organize that and make it actually happen. So yeah, I guess maybe tomorrow I'll go find a tree to plant, though it snowed today, so maybe that'll be a little difficult, but maybe in the future. But I think, again, this idea of just very small actions make a difference. So it's really incredible. Yeah, Francesca, please.
Part of our faith tradition, there's a confession component, and there's a great story of a Greek elder who, when people would come for confession, he would confess them and then absolve them and then tell them to go plant a tree. And at the end of all of their confessions, the hillside was covered in trees, and they could see the reminder of wanting to change their habits and become in closer connection with God's creation. It's a beautiful anecdotal story.
I think that's so true. It's also I think many people find such beauty and healing in nature. And so this connection is so important to continue to do that, because as you said, just the tree itself is like, I think I remember seeing in the beginning of COVID, I don't know if it was in Iceland or somewhere, they said to go hug a tree since we couldn't be physically together, that you still can embrace someone, so to speak, because nature lives, as we know, and it's really important. Hajar, I want to kind of invite you to also speak to this and kind of your work, and also this with like young people and interfaith groups, or also in the Muslim context that you've been as well, and maybe also kind of taking it into what does this look like within the framework of social justice too, and where does this kind of bring us?
Thank you so much for this.
Oh, sure.
Really, it's a very interesting question, and you see, the script, the faith has scripts. All faith have. We have the Quran. We also have the Hadith. So in there, everything is written in black and white. And when we follow that, social justice is there, protection of the environment is there. So it's only that we have to implement what is written for us, what is in the Holy Scripts, and then we should be able to, if like we implement what is written in the Holy Scripts, we should be able, like I do with my team, to involve the youth, to involve everybody. And at some point in time, I'll filter out about 2-3 photos of our work, just to inspire and to tell the ladies on this call, I have, and my team, we have made it a way of life. So every activity we do, we must incorporate environment protection. Whether it is a big meeting, whether it is a small meeting, whether it's a big meeting with His Excellency the President, there must be a planting of a tree or some green activity to remind us of that day. And we have forests that we talk to about this. So people find me on the one, say, Madam Green, please give us some trees. And true to that, in my car, I carry trees. And where I am now, I see all the ladies here, all your names. I make sure that I plant a tree and they put a name of all the other ladies on this call. So that's the next time we meet, I'll tell you how your tree is progressing. Yes, that's what is
That
going
would
to
be
happen.
awesome. That would
Thank
be
you
awesome.
so much. So thank
Yeah, thank you. I think also that's a really good leeway. So another question I have is, I mean, on this call, obviously we're coming from different faith traditions. So I think, and we're all energized by this passion and really care for creation in different ways of how we understand it. But I think generally we commonly all see that we need to protect our earth and it's really important. So I want to invite Hajar now from our FoRēL team to kind of comment on this piece as well, the interfaith action. How do we work together in this environmental action?
Yeah, no, great question and really, really good kind of insight so far. And obviously I come from the deeply ingrained Muslim and Islamic perspective on this, where, different concepts of stewardship, like, being a custodian of the earth, or justice and truth, trust, in terms of, managing and maintaining ecological balance, created by Allah and for his creation, and the amana, which is the concept of fulfilling a trust or an obligation that we've been given. I think we've all talked around the same theme and concept here, but what does it actually mean for me to align environmental or climate action with interfaith action? Well, let's put it this way. Interfaith action can be really contentious on so many different levels. We agree on so many different things and we disagree on many more things. And a lot of the time, we don't really find the balance in our action, because we rely on more softer discussions, and I guess why FoRēL, for example, was set up was to make sure that, and I use this, quote me if you like, to have courageous conversations. But environmental action for me personally is a soft action. It is the one thing that we have all in this panel, and I'm sure all of those in our audience have connected on. It's the less contentious issue. It's the one where if we don't save this planet, there, as to quote others, there is no planet B, and that is our issue. But what does this actually mean? I think if there's an estimated 37 million churches globally, 3.6 million mosques, 20,000 synagogues, and so on and so forth, and so many houses of worship dotted around the world. These institutions, these groups of people hold enormous assets. And this is where environmental action will begin, in my opinion, because, these differences can be put to one side and we can channel these fantastic actions such as, planting of those trees, like greening our buildings, finding, policies and subsidies that'll help us put solar panels on top of our, mosques, our churches, and so on and so forth, devising khutbas or sermons that we can speak to on a Friday, a Saturday, and a Sunday, just talking about, the three kind of Abrahamic faiths there. This is where environmental action and interfaith action collide, in my opinion. And this is where we can fulfill these values and use the influence of religious leadership to enable our own communities to pledge. And essentially what everybody has said is talked about is grassroots action, but mobilizing these communities can be done by our female leadership, by our religious institutions and our religious leadership. A second thing is obviously the awareness of the rights of people. So we're talking about, when we talk about the awareness of, the climate crisis, what are we actually talking about? I'm sitting in a comfortable home in Ireland with the electricity on. I have nothing to complain about. But where does the social justice element come into this? And where does the inequalities come into this? Is, on the other side of the world, perhaps. So this is where our interfaith action, our collaborative approach to this kind of action, and speaking on it and making our own communities aware, that's where I think that we collide. So, that obviously brings me to the education perspective. we have an opportunity as faith communities, as women leaders, to not only make sure these actions occur, but to continuously educate those around us through, as I said before, our collective female leadership qualities, such as, these human interactions that we've talked about, and so on and so forth, and responsible leadership. So that's for me how I believe that these two things collide.
Yeah, thank you, Hajar. Curious if any others also have some thought, and also I want to expand it a little bit. So obviously the interfaith, as Hajar was just saying, there is so much power in the faith traditions in the world. Just even thinking about, I know I think Hajjat and I were on the same Faith Invest webinar and talking about the property and land that houses of worship own, or even other kind of things that they have in terms of stocks and investments, how we can really be a changing force in this way, because if we all come together in this common environmental cause, we can do a lot. But also to expand it, obviously we live in a world that is not just faith institutions. So curious from the rest of the panel too, again, taking this interfaith piece and also expanding it, how do we work in our local communities with maybe some other nonprofit or grassroots organizations that are also doing this work, and how do we work together in this kind of common cause? And maybe sometimes it's a little difficult in other times as well. So anyway, yeah, Francesca, go for it.
As a mother, there's a lot of space for educating with kindness to children. We're coming into a season where some families will have Advent calendars leading up into Christmas. And so every day there's a little door you open and the kids get a treat. In my house, we do an Advent calendar of kindness or ecological actions. And so each day they open it up, and it's going to be something that's caring for another person or caring for the environment, whether it's picking up trash, changing the things that we're consuming or buying, looking at the sources of things, where I'm changing the conversation with my children. So it's not just about consuming, but it's about looking at the world and the effects that we're having with it. There's a lot of room in schools as well to do that. And when you put it into the mindset of these children that we just interact with the world in this way, it's helping a whole nother generation. Like I'm from California. I flee from fires every year. I have to get evacuated every year. It's a huge issue. Growing up, there was a lot of education around conserving water. Now, even as an adult, I turn the handle on and off in between each time I'm washing my hands or brushing my teeth, just because someone in elementary school taught me that. And so there's so much space to be teaching this within schools, within parishes, within any kind of church. So when we're talking about all of the interfaith piece, I also want to be focusing on children, and particularly the families, and talking to the mothers who can talk to their children in those parishes, in those churches, in the temples and the mosques, because sometimes it can feel overwhelming. But if you're just giving small little fun things that a family can do together, that can add up to a lot of change too. So they don't feel like they're just doing it on whatever the given day is that they come to worship, but it's actually being incorporated into the home.
Yeah, thank you, Francesca. I know that from another panel that you were on with me a while ago, that what stuck with me was the waste thing. And I really started thinking about looking at my trash, and that's a very small thing you talked about too, but even just looking at our own, like what we bring to the earth in terms of waste is super important to also look at. I'm curious if any others on the panel also want to talk about this, and then I will slowly move into Q&A, because I know we have a couple of questions in the chat. Yeah, Helle, I think.
I think I would like to also point out something. Of course, we have different, if we think about different groups in our societies, we have different motivations. But we all want our planet to remain a beautiful and livable place, so we can join our forces. But I think the faith communities, doesn't matter what faith communities, but the faith communities in general can do the best is to bring change into the attitudes towards creation. Because we have in our teaching that creation is not only a source for our well-being and comfort, but we have to recognize that it has a value of its own, given by a creator. We also know that this planet doesn't belong to us so that we can use it however we want. It belongs to the creator, and we are responsible for it. And we also know that well-being and happiness of human beings does not depend on what we have, but rather on good relationships with each other and our creator. So there is no point of exploiting this earth for constant economic growth. Instead, we should invest our time and energy into good relationships. And I think this is something what the faith communities can bring to the society, to talk about it, to teach about it, and to exemplify it, because I think we have the resources for this.
Yeah, thank you. There's a question, unless Hajjat or Hajar want to briefly respond to that, but I believe there's a question in the chat that kind of speaks to this, and I want to pose it to all of you. The question is about, kind of in your own context, what are the causes and justice initiatives that intersect with eco-justice? So how does this connecting the justice issues, kind of you're talking about what faith traditions bring to this table, how does then connecting it to the different justice issues open up opportunities for partnership and then these sharing of values? Just curious if some of you can speak to that question even more, I guess, sharing from your experiences of what does this look like Helle, what you were just speaking about, how are you bringing these values into the different partnerships that you're also fostering? Yeah, Francesca.
One of the very first commandments, the cornerstones of the Christian faith, is to love your neighbor as yourself. And if you are truly loving your neighbor as yourself, you will not be taking resources away from the future generations or consuming in such a way that it is harming people on other parts of the planet where they're not going to be able to inhabit where they are. It is so simple.
Also, I think Christian God, as much as we learn from our holy scriptures, the Bible, our God is a just God, and we as the followers of that God, we have to act justly in order to reflect him in this society. So it's as simple as that. I know it's sometimes difficult to do, especially if we talk about structures and we don't see these sinful structures, but there is we have to reflect on it, and we have to act individually and structurally justly if we want to reflect our creator.
It's a really good point. Hajar and Hajjat, do you want to add to this as well?
No, it has actually been responded to very well by the two first, Francesca and Helle. They have responded to that question very, very well. But what I have to say is that just sharing my example, I'm sure, like, so say in Uganda, we have the Interreligious Council, which brings together all these religions. And within there are programs that have to do with environment protection. So you take a big decision on a big table, and then you divide a responsibility to the various religions to take on in their respective, depending on their respective holy scripts. And then maybe at the end, you gather to see how each one has performed. But basically, my answer is not different from the two sisters. But I just wanted to share with you what we have in Uganda. And also we have the Faith Network on Environmental Action, where I'm a founding member. That is basically, it is the Faith Network on Environmental Action. You can even see the energy in the name. So we have a lot of energy in that network. So we work together, different religions, but common cause of protecting the environment. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Hajjat. Hajar, Francesca, go for it.
Can I just say one quick thing, is that I'm completely ignorant about all different faith groups and what their mandates are for care of creation. And it would be so empowering to get to see where we are all connected in that. And if there could be some sort of a breakdown, like you were just saying, it's so beautiful of you take this, we'll take this, and let's take that, and how we could all work together. What an incredible vision for the future. I would love to see a document like that if it exists.
It's a really good point. Maybe we'll have to make it from this panel. There was a question also, or Hajar, you wanted to comment first, I think, on the question that was in the chat.
So thanks a lot, Kieran, posing a very intricate question there. But just to answer the, I guess, the latter part of it, do we have a role to play in addressing the larger and more complicated structural issues regarding climate change? I think yes, most definitely. I think faith leadership, as opposed to political leadership, has, as I said before, has the opportunity to execute and create longer term change in educating communities, mobilizing from the pulpit and so on, as opposed to political leadership, where they set longer term actions and goals, with the expectation of future political leaders needing, and having to execute. So for example, as a faith leader, and myself, but if I was a faith leader, my advantage is that I am around for quite a long time. My values don't change, hopefully. And, my pulpit or where I'm speaking from is a more sustainable and a long-term position as a leader. Whereas as a political leader, for example, I have to write, goals and short-term initiatives, or maybe longer-term initiatives that the next government, if not my own, has to fulfill, right? So we do have a huge a role to play in this and addressing the larger and complicated issues, because for us, it's not about now, or it's about tomorrow and the day after. And we're able to sustain our action towards making those changes. And I hope I answered the question. It was very, very an excellent question, but I just wanted to make that distinction about political and faith leadership and religious leadership, and how different our realms are, and how ours are more long-term as opposed to the political leadership. But yeah, I think, as faith leaders, we need to speak out, and we shouldn't even be shy. We are educated enough. We know things not just from scripture, but we know things from the scientific perspective. There is a lot of knowledge that we have as faith leaders, especially as researchers, as people who come from different backgrounds. My entire PhD was on humanitarian, clean and renewable energy. And from a policy perspective. And the reason why I did it, obviously, because it meant a lot to me as a person from a faith perspective, wanting to be a servant leader and to make change that way. But also it meant that I was educating myself in order to bring about policy changes, policy recommendations for the most vulnerable in society. So we have, a lot of advantages here. Not only are we people of faith who are based on very true and spiritual and very important values from our scriptures and from our hadith in the Muslim tradition, I guess, but we also have the educational backing as well, whether it's something that we've done through our, farming. That's our education. You don't have to go to, a university and get a PhD to do this, but this is our education. Our education as Muslims, Christians, as people of faith is we put our values into action by constantly educating ourselves on these issues. So we have two very, very strong drivers to influence and make structural changes. Absolutely. I hope that was clear.
I think that was so incredibly powerful, Hajar, and I think that helps bring together these pieces that sometimes seem to kind of be floating away from one another of how do we actually make these connections. Because I really like this piece that you said, like, our traditions keep it further. Yeah, Hajjat, if you want to comment on this as well.
She had an excellent answer. I just want to expound on that answer. The political leaders do have constitutions, and the constitution can be changed by just touch of a pen. The constitution of a country can be changed by, a leader. When another leader comes, the constitution changes. Even a sitting leader can desire to change a constitution, and it is changed. However, the faith leaders, the scripts that we stand by, those are cast in stone. You're not going to change because somebody has come. No. So I think that adds to her answer. in that the authority that we use is a real solid authority. Political leaders use the constitutions that can be amended any minute, any time. I thank you so much.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that I agree. Again, just incredibly powerful. And we're running out of time here. So I just want to invite Helle and Francesca, if you have some last thoughts as well you want to share, and then I'll wrap us up. No pressure if you don't, that's totally okay.
Yeah, well, I think something what's going around in my head is that I'm incredibly thankful that I have been able to talk to you, dear sisters, and I have been able to learn from you and really to learn what you're doing and how you're doing, and this has been very enriching. So that's the only thought I wanted to still say.
I'm really glad. Thank God, that's awesome. And Francesca, if you want, I'll give you a second if you would like to say something. If not, no worries, and I'm just going to wrap up.
Can we directly affect political leaders, and should we be giving pressure on them? It's not the church's place. At least it's not what they seem to want to do. But every single one of us who are in countries where you vote for leadership, that's where you have the power. And so your own vote and the vote in the community around you, that's the way to do it. And I feel like that might be like part of the crux of what that question was, of like, what are you going to do about that? How do we actually engage with these larger companies? You vote with your dollar and you vote at your ballot box.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think, again, this piece that we are part of our communities, whether that also means our faith traditions, but also our local towns and the communities that we also have responsibility to. So being able to vote or doing something in your local community is also so important as we bring these values that we hold. And again, work with one another from all different walks of life and faith traditions. So I just want to thank you each for a really enriching and beautiful conversation. We're so grateful for all of you. We're grateful for all the questions, and I'm sorry for those we didn't get to answer. We hope that this will continue, the discussion continues, and kind of our goal in FoRēL is that it's not just the conversations here, but also eventually these kind of more face-to-face via Zoom conversations that are a bit more informal to also continue to foster these conversations. Because really, we have these real conversations where kind of these discussions sometimes don't really fit into maybe mainstream faith tradition conversations. We really want to make a space to make sure that these conversations are happening. So thank you to each of you for joining us today. Our team is going to drop into the chat, and they probably already did, all our social media channels. So you can follow us to kind of find out about our next events. Our social media networks also have some really great content on our Instagram. We highlight different places of worship and women in history of different faiths, and also our team, and then looking to also highlight women. They're doing incredible work, like everyone here on this panel, in our day-to-day lives. So we invite you to follow us and join us, and also would love your feedback. So feel free to email us, and we'll also drop the email in the chat. But we are a minute over our time, so I want to respect everyone's time this evening. Thank you all. We're excited for all the trees that Hajjat's going to plant, and then let us each also do something in our home communities that will also kind of bring this forward. So thank you very much. Our email is in the chat. Feel free to copy that if you'd like to talk to us. And we just want to thank you again, and we hope to see you at our next event. Thank you, everyone.